Yo, yo, yo. I can't walk. I don't have some cool intro, so let's just get to the start of the show. Washington Commanders defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio got in trouble for making insensitive remarks about the January 6th attack on the nation's Capitol building.
Businesses are being burned down, no problem. And then we have a dust up at the Capitol. Well, there's nothing burned down. And we're not going to talk about, we're going to make that a major deal.
The Washington Commanders fined Del Rio $100,000 for the comment and made him issue an apology too, but I don't think anyone's buying its sincerity. Because of these comments, politicians are not going to allow the team to build a new stadium. The president of the NAACP, as well as some pundits on sports TV, have called for Del Rio to lose his job over this too. While I find the comment to be ignorant because and I'm black, y'all, I don't think he should lose his job over this.
Why?
I'd imagine Jack Del Rio understood why black people were angry over George Floyd's death, but I don't think he understands why businesses that had absolutely nothing to do with the murder went down in flames because a cop laid his knee on George Floyd's neck for over 8 minutes. Stephen A. Smith's forehead addressed the elephant in the room when he talked about this on ESPN's First Take.
He's white. He's not black. And there's an awful lot of white people that cannot in any way identify with the plight that African Americans feel physically, emotionally, spiritually, subliminally. The list goes on and on and on.
Stephen A. Smith's forehead followed up that statement with a real question for black people.
When are we going to stop expecting them to do that?
I don't agree with riots and looting, but I think I understand why that shit happens. I think the fact that all of these people are minorities forces some people to envision themselves as the next name added to that list. Because society didn't give a fuck about these people, some people stopped giving a fuck about society and destroyed places of business out of anger and hopes for justice and or some free shit.
I go post on this motherfucker.
Black people can't gather by the hundreds and just bum rush a government building in our nation's capital because everyone knows would murder them niggas without any hesitation or remorse and televise that shit as a message to the rest of us to never even think of trying to do some dumb shit like that again.
And that's the truth, with some cheese on it. Yeah, ain't no meatloaf between these buns.
Since black people can't gather in masses and direct their anger at the government, that rage is unleashed on random establishments within proximity of wherever extreme injustice occurs.
That's so very, very sad.
With that being said, even if I wasn't disabled, I wouldn't go looting during a riot because I never felt angry enough over social issues to do some shit like that in my own community. Looting and burning down a local Foot Locker over social injustice to me is like blowing up a postal truck because your wife's fucking an Amazon delivery driver behind your back. I'm just saying all these deaths should mean a lot more to some people than just an opportunity to tear some shit up without consequence and possibly stealing a PlayStation 5 in the process. By that logic, I don't think anyone could really blame me for feeling like a dope fiend.
Is this a 5 o'clock free crack giveaway?
If I ever got caught looting in a riot. Judging a book by its cover, I think Jack Del Rio might even know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody whose business got destroyed during the riots. Every time he sees this motherfucker, he's constantly bitching about how the protests and riots ruined his life, and Jack Del Rio never has shit to say to this nigga about it except
that's fucked up.
While arrests made during the riots didn't gain much publicity, the congressional hearings about the January 6th attack are coming up and liberal media can't
Shut the fuck up
about it in an attempt to distract the people from the shitty job Joe Biden's doing as president. Annoyed after reading so many headlines about it on his social media feed, Jack Del Rio asked a question on Twitter that could possibly lose him his job and keep him out of football for the rest of his life.
Tragic.
In 2016, Colin Kaepernick simply took a knee during the national anthem in protest of police brutality to start a conversation about race, and conservatives said,
Hey, yo, who mans is this?
Get the fuck out of here.
6 years later, Jack Del Rio simply asked a question on social media about why there's so much emphasis on one racially driven situation over another, and now liberals are saying,
Hey, yo, who mans is this?
Get the fuck out of here.
These turn of events have forced me to ask this question. What is the appropriate and universally acceptable way to start the conversation that could possibly begin the process to end racism? Jack Del Rio's on camera saying he's willing to talk about it.
I just think it kind of two standards. And if we apply the same standard and we're going to be reasonable with each other, let's have a discussion. That's all it was. Let's have a discussion. We're Americans. Let's talk it through.
Stephen A. Smith's forehead made a suggestion on who Jack Del Rio should have that conversation with.
You know what that means, Ryan Clark? That means you and your boys, okay, with the pivot, should go and talk to Jack Del Rio because he invited you. He invited you. He said, let's have a conversation.
I like the Pivot podcast, but I don't think that discussion would be very constructive on that forum because the blacks outnumber the whites 3-1. Jack Del Rio would be incapable of expressing how he really feels about this issue because I believe Channing Crowder and Fred Taylor would be staring at him throughout the entire interview with looks on their faces that say,
I mean, really, man, you could just you up.
I think at this point, who Jack Del Rio talks to about this issue because the NFL is going to prep his questions and answers before his interview's even scheduled so that
Absolutely nothing
will get resolved or accomplished from it. How this entire situation was handled proves to me that racism will never die. First and foremost, there's way too much money to be made on both sides of the fence of racism. If you don't believe me, just ask Black Lives Matter.
After the summer of 2020, we'd heard that Black Lives Matter took in, I think, $90 million, and we wondered what they were going to spend the money on. Now we know they spent $6 million on a mansion for themselves.
I also believe there's sacrifices that people on both sides of the argument are not willing to make. There's some white people that are just not willing to share the benefit of doubt that they've awarded themselves for so long with the rest of us.
Okay, you're good to go.
If you don't believe that benefit of doubt exists, then how the fuck did hundreds of white people gain access inside of the Capitol building to kill some people and smear feces on the wall? Lack of trust is the biggest obstacle black people must overcome to make our sacrifice to end racism, which is to forgive white people for what they've historically done to us. Unfortunately, there's two factors that hold black people back from achieving that level of forgiveness.
First, accountability. Long as we're still in pain, we need someone to blame. What can you do with all that pain if you've let the bastard off the hook? Second, identity. Without this rage consuming me, without this resentment, this bitterness, who am I?
I believe these factors scare the shit out of people on both sides of the argument to come to a compromise so the rest of us are left to suffer because of it. Anyone that dares suggest any new ideas to end racism or even question decisions made along the way runs the risk of losing their livelihood for it. Jack Del Rio's living proof of that.
I'm being respectful. I just asked a simple question. Really, let's get right down to it. What did I ask? A simple question.
Publicly shutting people up on issues like this will no doubt make racism more difficult to erase and cause even more problems in the future.
Because if we're ever going to have any hope towards making this world a better place, making somebody cower and hide and muzzle themselves and never feeling free to speak up only disguises what they're feeling, which harbors and harnesses their ignorance. Therefore, they walk around feeling ignorant, being oblivious to the kind of things that plague them and us and our society, and none of us get any better.
For the past decade, I've noticed a lot of white people lose their jobs over racially insensitive remarks they've made in the past, and the tension in America have only got worse. Hate crimes are at an all-time high right now, with racially driven mass murders at schools, churches, and fucking supermarkets where the victims include little kids and old church ladies.
I'm not a smart man.
But I think silencing people's opinions on race has to be a contributing factor to all of this violence. If Jack Del Rio loses his job over this, the NFL might as well stop their End Racism campaign, because firing people over asking questions about racially sensitive topics contradicts what that slogan's supposed to stand for. Firing Jack Del Rio is not going to make me feel like any less of a nigga than I already do. The path to end racism is very long and full of a lot of shit that America does not have time to tiptoe around anymore. An honest conversation about race with Jack Del Rio could be the first step down that path, and I'm willing to step on that pile of dog shit if it could make the world a better place for all of us.
And that's all I have to say about that.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, please subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comment section below.
Peace. I'm Audi 5000.
Those who
wish to follow me, I welcome with my hand. Thank you for being a friend.
And those are my thoughts for this video. But then again, what do I know? I'm just an old crippled bastard. Ooh, 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 ooh. I ain't too proud to beg for your money, so like, share, and subscribe.